Hey there, my name is Ryan, and in this video we're going to be talking about each and every one of the 30 God Power cards, special cards, in the game Santorini. Now if you're not familiar with Santorini, then I would suggest you check out my other video first where I go through a basic rules explanation of the game and talk about how to use the special power cards. I just don't go into detail in each one. That is the point of this video. So let's start with this. How do you select which ones to play with of the 30 cards? The rules suggest that the most godlike player goes through and selects a number of cards, looking at what they are, equal to the number of players. So in a 4-player game, it would select 4 cards. Let's say there's a 2-player game. The player selects 2 different cards. The player to their left decides which card they want to play first. So in this case, let's say the player on the left takes Hera. The player who originally selected the 2 powers is stuck with whatever is left over. Hera is now the first player. So the person who had the first pick of the cards now will go first, place their worker first, and then you'll place your workers. Then they will have the first move. Now for my friends, we tend to go through and just pick out powers we want to play and then decide to start player randomly. Or what we actually do most often is we just pick them randomly and see what crazy combinations we come up with. Quick reminder here before we jump in, all 30 powers are eligible to be played in a 2-player game, but when you get to the 3 and 4-player accounts, make sure to check the rules and make sure that specific card is eligible to be played in a 3 or 4-player game. Let's get started. We are going to start with number 1, Apollo. Now for the purpose of this video, I will always do the gray worker as the one utilizing the special power I am teaching, and also I use the terms adjacent and neighboring interchangeably to mean the 8 spaces around your character that you may move or build into. Apollo's power is simply if you can move into an opponent worker space using normal movement rules, a legal move, you force them to take your old space. So he may move into this space and cause a swap. This would also function if it was on ground level. Apollo can move into this blue worker space and you force the blue worker into the space he just now left. Also, using normal movement rules, this worker may jump into this worker space, forcing this worker up to the top of this level. That is an okay move, since it is a legal move for Apollo's worker to step into the opponent's space. The opponent is now forced, no matter what condition. This would not work the other way around. This worker cannot jump up 2 levels. That is not normal movement conditions, but jumping down from 2 levels is. Number 2 is Artemis. Artemis's power simply allows her to move and then move 1 additional time. So in this case, Artemis could move here, then take 1 additional move to here and win the game. But may always take 1 and then optional up to 1 more move, and then she may build. Number 3 is Athena. Athena power states that on your turn, if you move up 1 level, opponent's workers may not move up a level. So in this specific situation, Athena cannot reach this level 3 tower to block it in time before the blue player wins the game. But if Athena takes a step here, now the blue player is not allowed to move up on their turn. They would probably have to delay, move this worker here, and now Athena has the ability to move here and block off that tower. But anytime Athena moves up at any level, as ground to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, the opponent's worker is not allowed to move up on their turn. Number 4, Atlas. Atlas's power is basically be a big jerk. At least that's what it feels like. He is a lot of fun to play, actually. So in this situation, Atlas is allowed to play a dome at any level. So domes can be built ground level, first level, second level, or third. In this specific situation, Atlas is allowed to move here and place a dome at ground level, effectively blocking the poor blue worker. On his next turn, he could take a step away and place another dome at this level, which now walls off the blue worker for the duration of the game. But this power also would apply to if there was a reason to block off a level 1 tower, or he can build domes as normal on a level 3 tower. Up next, number 5, Demeter. Demeter's power is very simple. She may take 1 movement action and build. And then on her turn, she may choose to build an additional time, but not in the same space. In this specific situation, there were 2 level 1s, but it could definitely be a situation where you moved up here, you built a level 2, and you built a number 1. Only restriction is not on the same space that you placed your first block on. Number 6's power, Hephaestus, is very similar to what we just now covered with Demeter. Hephaestus may move and on the build 1 additional time, but only in the space that they just built on. So instead of 2 different spaces, he must build in the space that the last block just went on. So in this case, it's a great way to wall off this character. One quick note though, you are not allowed to build domes as Hephaestus in this way. So you cannot move here build, and then take an additional action to build a dome. Domes are specifically not allowed in this case. Number 7, Hermes, has to be one of the craziest simple powers. Simply stated, each of their workers may move any number of times as long as they do not move up and down on their turn. So in this case, this worker is free to move here, this worker could move here, and then either one can perform a build action. Or you could have this character move here, and then this character perform a build action, because they also are allowed to move 0. What they cannot do is step up a level and then still perform this action. So for example, you could not move here and then step up. You can't move any number of times if you perform any sort of moving up or down action on your turn. That also would apply in this case. You cannot move this character up here. You actually are not even allowed to move this character up 1 and this character multiple times. If they move anyone up or down a single level, their power is gone for the turn. They must follow all normal movement rules. Number 8 is Minotaur. Minotaur has the ability to move into an opponent's space if the space behind that opponent is unoccupied. So in this case, both these spaces are unoccupied, so Minotaur can move into the space and force the opponent's worker over here. Also can move into this space and force its opponent workers here. It's important to note that you are allowed to perform this action even if the space you are moving them into is not a legal move for them. So this worker could move into this space, which would force this worker up here. Forced actions do not have to be legal actions. One more note, even if this was a level 3 tower, you are allowed to move into this space, force this worker up here, and this worker actually does not win the game. If you've seen my video on the basic rules of this game, you do not win by being forced into a level 3. You must take the move action yourself into a level 3. Number 9 is Pan. Pan is certainly the one that when you first teach the rules of the game, people say, well, that's so overpowered. All Pan has to do is step off of a level 2 block and onto a ground level, and the game is over. Pan must simply step down 2 levels, either from a 2 to the ground level, or if a character like Minotaur forces him to a level 3, he must just step down to level 1 or the ground level, moving down 2 or more total levels at once, and the game is immediately over and Pan wins. Pan's opponents must quickly build ground level blocks as Pan approaches a level 2, or try to keep Pan off a level 2 altogether. Now for the last of the simple gods, number 10, Prometheus. Prometheus' power simply states that if you do not move up on your turn, you may build both before and after your move. There are no limitations on building in the same space, so you could build, move, and build in the same space. You could build, move, and build in 2 separate spaces, but you cannot move up. So you will not be allowed to build, move, build, since I moved on my turn. You also could not, if this was a situation, you cannot go build, move, build. Basically, by stepping upwards on your turn, you forfeit your ability to do your special power. Now we're on to the advanced god powers. Aphrodite is the first one at number 11. Aphrodite has to be one of my favorite ones to play. Its effect does not take place on your turn, but on your opponent. If one of your opponents begins their turn neighboring one of your workers, its last move must also be to a space neighboring one of your workers. So for example, this worker is free to move here, anywhere he wants. But this worker is beginning its turn next to one of the Aphrodite's workers. So it may not move here and build. It may move here, 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 or here. Any of these movements that are next to one of these powers. Or if she had a special power that allowed a double move, it's possible to move away and then move back. But it says that on your last turn, you must move into a space neighboring one of Aphrodite's workers. Number 12 is Ares. And Ares states that at the end of your turn, your unmoved worker may remove 1 unoccupied block from one of the neighboring spaces. You also may remove tokens. Tokens are not in the base game, but that's also mentioned. So for example, if I want to get rid of this level 3, I can move and build with this worker as usual. My unmoved worker then may remove an unoccupied block somewhere neighboring him. In this example, I cannot remove this block since it is occupied, but I can certainly take this level 3 off the top. Alright, up next is number 13, Baia. Now Baia is one of our first truly mean characters in the game. During setup, you must place your workers first if you are Baya, and you also must place your workers in a perimeter space, somewhere along the edge. So you must go first in a perimeter space. Let's say we do this. The reason is, if Baya takes a move action, in the next space, in the same direction of their move action, is occupied by an opponent worker, that worker is dead. Gone from the game. So once again, if this situation was, and you were playing the blue worker, you can't start here because you're dead. You can't start here. You're dead. You can't start here. You're dead. So Baya has the ability to destroy other workers and make them completely wiped off the game. So once again, Baya can move, and if the next space in the same direction is occupied by an opponent's worker, that worker is removed. This power is used regardless of level, so even if this worker was standing on a level 2, if you move and the next space is occupied, which it is, by an opponent worker, that worker is gone. Up next, number 14, we have probably one of the most difficult ones to explain in the play, and that is Chaos. Chaos is named so because when you pick Chaos, you take all of the unused simple power cards. You know they're simple because they are numbered 1 through 10, and also they are pink at the bottom. You take all these cards and you shuffle them and form a draw pile in front of you. Now in this case, I'll put it on the board so you can see it. Then you flip the top card. In this case, it's Atlas. Now you are Atlas. You have access to Atlas's power, so now you may move and place a dome just like Atlas would. But if you or an opponent ever complete a tower by putting a dome on a 3rd level, you immediately flip a new card. And now you are Pan. Or now you are Prometheus. This continues to happen for the duration of the game. Every time a tower is completed by a dome being placed on the 3rd level, you flip over a new power. If you ever run out, you just reshuffle and keep going. You can win by the win conditions. There's win condition, you use their power, so it might be incentivized for you to finish a tower, or maybe there are times where maybe you are playing Pan, and an opponent can place a 3rd level tower, a dome on 3rd level tower, and make you switch before you get to your win condition. So it is truly chaotic. Number 15, Charon, is pretty simple to explain. Before you move, not after, before you move, you may take an opponent worker neighboring any of your workers, and then take that worker and flip it to the other side of your worker. You must do this with a worker that you intend to move. It says before your worker moves. So if this worker wants to move, before he moves, he can flip this character over here, then take his move, go into a space if he wants to. You could choose to flip this worker here, then take a move anywhere he wants to and build. Or even this worker, if it's the one planning on moving, may flip this worker up to here. Just like Minotaur, you must not have a legal move if you force. Forcing often is just into an unoccupied space. So you don't need to have this be a legal move. You simply flip this one up here. And also, just like Minotaur, even if this was a 3rd level tower, you could take this character and flip them up here, do your move, in your build, and the game goes on because the game is not ended unless you move onto a 3rd level tower, not if you are forced onto one. Number 16 is Chronos. Chronos has a special win condition that simply says if there are 5 or more completed towers, you immediately win the game. So in this case, either one of your 2 workers can move, build that dome, and these are now completed towers. You have 5, the game ends immediately. Number 17, Circe, has an interesting power that again has to do with your opponents more so than you. If at the start of your turn, your opponent's workers do not neighbor each other, you and you alone have access to their power until the start of your next turn, which is important because let's say this is Minotaur, and Minotaur can move into you and force you away. But let's say Minotaur starts their turn here. Minotaur's workers are not neighboring, not adjacent. So now Circe, the gray worker, has access, and only she has access to his power. So she could force him here. Then on his next turn, he still doesn't have his power because it's until the start of the next turn. So even if you were to force someone here into their neighbor, they still don't have access to the power because what it says is that at the start of your turn until the start of your next turn. So you basically steal the power for the duration in your turn and for their turn, and then they can get back together. Let's say this happened, you moved and forced their worker. Their turn, they don't have access to the power. They move here. Now your turn starts, they are neighboring. Their power goes back to them. The issue is if they are neighboring, you don't have any powers. Your whole power is trying to get them to split apart and then to steal whatever power they have. Number 18 is Dionysus. Now Dionysus says that if you complete a third level tower by putting a dome on it, now as a completed tower, you may take an additional move. But not with your workers, but with your opponent workers. So in this case, you could move him here and place here. Or you could choose to leave him there and place her. Two things, it does say the word may, so you could choose not to take an additional move and just leave it at that. It also states that no one can win on this additional move. So if you had a situation where you can move an opponent to a third level tower, just pretend they were on a second level, you could force them up here. No one's allowed to win during this additional move, so now they start their turn on a third level tower, which, as we've said before, you have to take a move yourself. And even in this case, it says that no one can win on this additional move. Next up here, we have number 19, Eros. Now, Eros has a couple special conditions. During setup, you must place your workers somewhere along opposite edges of the board. Here and here, here and here, here and here. They cannot start next to each other. Perimeter spaces, opposite edges of the board. He also has a special win condition. Simply stated, if Eros is standing on 2 level 1 towers, and you move your other worker here, they are neighboring and both on a level 1 tower, they win. That's all he has to do is get himself on a level 1 tower, neighboring his worker, move onto this tower, again not be forced, move onto this tower at level 1, neighboring his other worker at a level 1 tower, and the game is over. It's even crazier in a 3-player game, where a 3-player game, they have to be neighboring at any height, level 1, level 2, or level 3. So the other workers in the game really have to work to prevent from happening. So for example, if we saw this situation right here, the blue worker would need to jump up here and then not build here, because that would also be a win, but build somewhere a little further away. So they're not quite a win condition yet. And Eros is going to be working to get 2 workers adjacent to each other on level 1 blocks. In a 2-player game, again, a 3-player game, that's a win. So everyone's probably trying to work against Eros to keep them from doing this exact move. We're on to number 20, Hera. Now Hera is the gray workers, as I've done through the whole video, but Hera has a completely passive power. On your opponent's turn, they may not win by moving onto a perimeter space. So in this case, you may not win by moving onto a perimeter space. This is not a victory. This is a perimeter space that's not winning. Up next, we have number 20, Hestia. Hestia just simply has an additional build. So they may move, build, and then build again. There are not restrictions on whether you build in the same space twice or in a different space. So you might think that she's more powerful than the other workers who could double build. But actually, the one restriction is she may not build on a perimeter space. So she cannot build here and build in any of these. Now, once again, she can not use her power and just simply build in one of these spaces and be done. But if she wants to do 2 builds, she must build twice, either this way on non-perimeter spaces or to ground levels. She could step up, again, build 1, build 2, or 1 and 2. Really no restrictions inside, but on the outside, you may not use your power by building twice on a perimeter space. Up next, we have another very passive power, number 22, Hypnus. So the start of the opponent turn, if any of your opponent workers is higher than all their others, it cannot move. So again, in this example, the gray is Hypnus. He is the character of the power we're talking about. Right now, the blue is standing on a level 1 and a level 1 block. So all moves are okay. But let's say on his turn, he moves to this level 2 tower. That's fine. At the start of the next turn, though, he's at a level 2 and the female worker is still at level 1. He cannot move up and take this victory because he is higher than his other workers. So again, if any of the workers of your opponents are higher than the other workers, they must move the lower one. Now this lower one can move here, free to move around, maybe work up to a level 2 and allow, once she's standing on a level 2 tower somehow, then this would be a legal move. Number 23, gotta love Limus. Limus simply says that on their opponent turns, they may not build in spaces neighboring one of your workers. So let's use this example. Moving here, this worker could build, but we're saying the gray is Limus. So this is not a valid build space. Or move here, cannot build here, here, here. This is okay. It's not neighboring one of Limus's. Not okay, not okay. The one exception is when building a dome to complete a level 3 tower. So if we had a situation where Limus was about to win the game by, oh no! If we had a situation where Limus was about to win the game by stepping on a 3rd level tower, the one exception is you are allowed to build next to Limus if it is building a dome to complete a level 3 tower. Up next, number 24, Medusa. Now, Medusa has one of the most terrifying powers in the game, and that's after your turn. That means after you move and after you build, look at both your workers. If either of your workers are neighboring an opponent worker, and that opponent worker is at a lower level than you, that worker is turned into stone. In this specific example, it happens again here. Both of Blue's workers were in neighboring zones lower than Medusa's worker. This would even happen if both of them were neighboring this one, or if both of them were neighboring this one, and this was the move. So at the end of the turn, anyone in a lower space neighboring one of your workers, either one of your workers, is immediately turned into stone and replaced with blocks. Number 25, Morpheus, actually has one of the more unique powers in the game. Morpheus at the beginning of every turn takes a block and sets it on his player card. Then he takes a worker, as always, and moves, then that worker may build. But he does not take a block from the bank like all the other builders do. He actually takes a block from his player card. Now that might not seem that unique until you know that he can choose not to take a block and just pass up on building this turn. In which case the blue player might move and build, and then once again Morpheus at the beginning of their turn is going to place a block on their player card, and then move, and then on the build could choose to place one block, could choose to place both blocks, or once again could choose not to place a block. Let's say blue moves here and builds. Beginning of Morpheus' next turn, once again, picks up another block. Now Morpheus will move here and then can place one block, could place two or all three. And in fact, these blocks are told to be treated like currency or like money, free to trade out any size block. They're more just placeholders here, remember that they're there. So he could choose to place a level 1 there, take that off, place a level 2 here, take that off and place another level 2 here. Morpheus never takes a normal build action. It's always put a block at the beginning, move, choose to take off, use 0, use 1, up to as many blocks as are on your card. Up next, Persephone here, number 26. It's another really fun passive power. Actually, one of the more fun powers to play in the game. And that is, you are the goddess of growth. So, on your opponent's turn, if they can move up, they must. So for example, Persephone can move here and place a level 1 block there. On her opponent's turn, they can't move this worker because they have the possibility of moving up. So they must move up and take a build action. Then once again, Persephone, if she wants to, can move here, place level 2. This worker now must move up. Now, of course, you don't want to give your opponent the victory here, but it can be a good wrench in their plan to force them to move up when you want them to and dictate which of their characters takes an action. Alright, 4 left. Up next is number 27, Poseidon. Poseidon states that after you move and after you build, if your unmoved worker is on a ground level space, they may build up to 3 times. So in this example, this unmoved worker could place a level 1 here, a level 2 here, and a level 1 here. So as long as this unmoved worker is on ground level, up to 3 moves from that worker. Number 28 is Selene, and Selene actually makes a difference between the male and the female worker. It says instead of your normal build action, you may build a dome at any level with your female worker, even if your male worker moves. So in this example, we can move our female worker and build a dome at any level. Well, it sounds a lot like Atlas, but there's a little more flexibility here. First of all, only the female worker can do it. That's a limitation. But also it says even if the male worker moves. So let's say we have a few blocks out here like this. The male worker could choose to step up here and take a move action, he can't build. So as your build, if you would like to, the female worker can just pop a dome down at any level. Second to last power here is Triton, number 29. And Triton's power is that every time you take a move action to a perimeter space, one is ones around the outside, you may immediately take another action. And that's actually true even if you go to a ground level or a block, you may take another action. I set up this ridiculous example to show you how this power works. You could move here. This is a perimeter space. You would then move to here. Well, you just took a move to a perimeter space, so you could then move to here. Or you now take a move to a perimeter space. You can continue going, and actually, this would be a winning situation for this character. So again, a little bit of a ridiculous situation, but this character, number 29 Triton, every time a movement is taken to a perimeter space, you may go again. Now, once you were to break that, let's say opponent worker broke that by stepping right here. Sorry, right here. You can move, you can move, you can move again, but once you step here, it's over. You've now stepped off a perimeter space. So you have to take your build action from right here at this point. And last we have number 30, Zeus. Zeus has, when you first hear it, a very overpowered card, but actually ends up being a pretty difficult one to play strategically. So Zeus says that you may move and perform your build action underneath yourself if you'd like. You may perform a normal build action as well, but you may perform a build action underneath yourself, forcing yourself up one level. The reason it's not as great as you think is if, let's say we move here and then build under yourself, forcing yourself to another level. Remember, forcing up a level is not winning. This would not be a winning move. You have to move onto there. It specifically says forcing yourself up to a level 3 is not a victory. It's also a little difficult to play because you imagine a situation at the beginning of the game. You can't just go straight up. You can move here and then place under yourself. But your next move now has to be here. You can't not move. And then you can place under yourself again, which would be nice. But it's not as helpful as it might sound in the situation. But as I just showed you, it can be very helpful in this specific situation where you're trying to get up to that level and you actually may move beside it and then build under yourself. The next turn you could move here and build and basically skip the work it might take to get up a level sometimes. Alright, and that is it. Every single one of the 30 special power cards explained. As always, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below and I'll get back as soon as I can. And also subscribe to the channels and see some playthroughs of Santorini, some rule teaches of other games, and a lot of other content. See you there.